Okay, so yeah, I think I cut down the introduction a bit.
Okay.
I looked up you in the internet, what you're doing, and I heard you're an Arsenal London supporter, which is the most important thing to know about you. And the second most important thing is about you that you, beside doing a lot of design, being active in the Chuck London and being active in third-party developer Chuck and so on and so on and teaching people. I heard from some rumors that you are very good in email templating, especially for Disney. Is this something true about?
We didn't do any email template for Disney, but we have done a lot of email HTML templates for some big TV companies and stuff like that. So
okay,
yeah.
So yeah, today's session is 20 actionable design tips for non-designer, which is perfectly for me then. So I'm the target group. So I would say the stage is for you. Let me
share my screen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so the first surprise is that there's more than 20, but it would have been a very short talk otherwise. So I'm Eoin, as Benjamin has just said. I'm from Square Balloon, a small design agency in London. And my talk is 60 design ideas for non-designers. I haven't counted them, that could be wrong. So first of all, let's start by saying thank you to Watchful and all of the other sponsors. I'm not going to name them all, you can see them there. Please visit the website afterwards. It's really important that we have sponsors for Joomla and open source projects. So thanks to these guys for an amazing effort in sponsoring. And the first thing I'm going to do, Benjamin, I might need your help here. I've got some votes set up, I believe. And the first thing I'd like to do is have a vote. So let me see if I can do the poll.
Yes. You should have an option below.
Yes, I do have the option. So, okay, so here's the first question, which is design something that people are naturally just good at? So is it something that you are just good at or not good at? Because I hear a lot of people say to me, oh, you know, you're either good at design or you're not. Okay, so we got a few people saying yes, but we got more saying no, which is great because that's why we're all here. So I'm going to end that one and move on to the next one. And I have another poll, which is another question, which is, can design be taught? Oh, is it showing or not? Yes, I think it is.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, it's can you teach design? And so everybody so far said yes, which is great because otherwise, why would you be at this talk? But if you can't teach design, Harvard does a master's in design. So some people have said to me, a lot of people have said, you know, you're either good at it or you're not. And I don't believe that, obviously, because Harvard are teaching it and they know more than me. So before we start, if everybody could just accept that you can teach design, and I'll try my best to teach you some design tips. And why you should listen to me, I've been in business for 13 years. My ex-business partner was a very old school designer, and the key part is he drilled the rules into me. And I think that should say a lot to you in the fact that there are rules that can be drilled into people. And he was an old school print designer, so he would get letters out of a box, put them in a dark room, and put them all lined up. And if somebody opened the door, it's like in a dark room for photography, everything would be ruined. They'd have to start again, and they'd have to courier the design everywhere. They wouldn't send it by email. So when he came to me, he said, I hate technology. You can use technology, but I know design. And he taught me kind of everything I know today for design perspective anyway. So there are design rules. Design is not something you're either good at or not. Nothing is really like that. You know, things that you're good at are things that you take an interest in and things that you practice. And the way you practice design, because people might say, how can I practice design when I'm not good at it, is you copy other people's good designs, you find designs you like, and you try and replicate it. And if you can do that, then you will start to improve at design. And with everything, the way to get better is just to keep trying and practicing. And so the number one rule, which I was taught, is simplify your design. So don't go crazy adding elements everywhere. I used to learn a new technique like, oh, I can animate stuff. So I'm going to animate this and this and this. And suddenly the whole page is spinning around and it's very distracting and it doesn't convert very well. And my business partner used to say to me, just simplify it. Just don't go crazy. Don't add every single thing you know. It will make it look worse. So that would be my first tip to everyone. And back then, I heard it and I didn't understand it like I do now. So maybe some guys might not understand it who are watching, but just try to keep that in mind, that try not to overcomplicate things. And the number 2 rule of design is be open to feedback. I know a lot of designers who get really sensitive, like, oh, they didn't like my design. Well, that's your job. You know, you have to receive feedback and you can't improve without feedback. And it's a natural part of the process. You might not get it right first time. Even the best designers might not get it right first time because, you know, it is slightly subjective design. But you can always go back and ask for clarity and say, what is it you don't like? Because I would hear a client say, I just hate that design. And then I would go back and say, well, what is it you don't like about it? And say, well, I really don't like that you've used this specific word here. And I say, so if I change that word, will the design be all right? Yeah, the design will be fine. Well, I was about to go and redesign the whole thing. But asking a few questions will help you to understand what they don't like. And reducing the number of messages will help you to simplify your designs. So if you have too many messages in too much of a short space, kind of like having too many road signs, you kind of lose all the impact of them. So try and stick to one clear message at a time. You know, it doesn't have to be on the whole page. It could be in a section on the page. But just to show you an example, this is actually something I've built. This is a customer's given me all of this feedback. We're passionate about trees, and we need to have a satisfaction guarantee, and we need to have a free quote, and we need to have learn to love your garden again with a complimentary tree analysis. And we need to say, if we give a tree, we take a tree. And additionally to what they asked for, Recapture decided that it was important to say we're protected by Recapture. There is so much going on here. You can't possibly expect everybody to read all of these messages and expect them to work together like that. So I will be going to the client and just saying, can we just, you know, reduce, maybe take a couple of the messages out and keep some of them, not all of them, because you've lost it. You've lost the messaging completely because it's overwhelming, you know. So moving on to the next tip, which is about negative space. If you don't know what negative space is, it's just white space. It's a really good thing to have. A really common thing to happen is for your client to say, oh, there's some space there, let's put something in it. But you don't have to. And as the designer, you should try not to in the first place. And don't be scared to push back on your clients. Don't be scared to say, look, we don't want it to look too cluttered. We want the message to be really clear. So we're not putting everything everywhere as much as we can. And to give an example of negative space is on the left there. You can see this is from the Harvard website. And they've used negative space really cleverly. And that's obviously a very good designer who's able to achieve that. I don't suggest you go and try and make things that complicated. If you're a non-designer, try and simplify everything. It will look better anyway. And moving on from that is more spacing tips, really, especially around logos. So I have another vote. And this time the question is, who knows how to correctly space a logo? So I'm sure some people may know it, some people may not know it, and some people may say, is there even like a correct way of doing that? Isn't it just by eye or whatever? So we got quite a few people voted, and everyone said not me. So I will move on to the next point, which is how we do it is similar to this. This is Keller Williams. They are a real estate company in America, so you guys might have heard of them. And if you look, the way they're doing it is on, they're saying the X height of the KW. So X height is a typographical term, and it basically means the height of a letter. So in this case, they've used the K, and they're saying that the KW above it has to be the size of 2 Ks. So you see the K on top of the other K. And on the logo, they've said that the W, the size of that, will be the width that has to be around the edges. And when you turn it on the side, it's the height. And what you can see here is on the K, this is called an ascender, the bit that comes above the normal height of a letter without an ascender, or a descender, which would be like a G or a Y or something has a descender at the bottom and then an ascender at the top. The W is not including the ascender. So that's how much space you want around it. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you often receive logos from clients and there's already spacing around it on the website, especially if you're using a template. So you may remove all of the spacing from it, because actually having this space on the left might mean that there was already space on the left and you've pushed it in and now it doesn't line up. So you might decide to crop it so it has no spacing around it. But I still want you to be aware that the client has a brand guideline which shows you should have this much space above and below it. So try and consider that as well, even if you have to use padding or some other CSS to do it. Next rule is about contrast. So text versus background, and it's especially on sliders. You might hear me say sliders a lot in this, but I'll just show you what I mean by that. Here's an example website. And if you look at this second menu item is here, and I can't read it because the hair is a dark color and the text is a dark color. So there isn't enough contrast. Very hard to read that. And also, this is quite a busy image. And what would be really, really easy to solve this problem would be to move the woman's face over to the left-hand side. So you could probably flip the image in this case. You can't always, if there's text or something on an image, it would be backwards, so you might not want to do it. But if you flipped it, her head would be around here, and maybe this background or this background wouldn't be as noisy, and you might be able to see things. But this is something I see really commonly, especially on sliders, because people don't necessarily realize how, or maybe they don't know how to fix it. We'll cover that later on anyway. So yeah, again, like this, N is on a white background with her shirt is white, and it's kind of hard to read. So just think about the picture overall rather than specific parts. And contrast and how to deal with logos, because logos are normally a set color, right? And that might mean that there is difficulty in having contrast with them. Well, I really would suggest if you're having big trouble with them, is just to put them in a white box or something. But normally I prefer to avoid that if I can, probably by making the entire background white of that section. But here's something you could consider. So we have like a grid of like, I don't know, little call outs. And when you hover on them, this is the effect. And we wanted to have the logo. So we just made all of the logos white. Normally a customer won't complain if you make them white or black. If you start making them blue and orange, you might go miles away from the brand guidelines. So don't go crazy like that. But making it white and not changing anything else on it would work. And we've made the background pink. You can tell this is Algarve granite. You can tell the background image was probably granite color. And basically it needed a color over it to make the logo stand out. So we've added the pink. And that is a good way of just making logos stand out in certain sections, especially if you're using like accreditations or something like that, or supplier logos. We work with these guys. That sort of thing might be difficult to work on your website design, but this is a way to solve the problem. And the next one leading on from that is image treatments. So you can use mix blend, which is a CSS property, and you can make text readable. And so here's an example of a bit of text on top of a pretty noisy background. There's some tarmac there, and then there's windows which are kind of white. The bricks are kind of reddish. And so if you just add a treatment of mix blend, so we've taken like the blue from the brand and we've added it to the background, and then we've just given it that treatment. And so before it was like this, you can read the text, but some parts are clearer than others. And on this, it's all kind of clear, very easy to read. So the way you can do this in the UTheme Pro, I know some people are using it now, so I just put it in here quickly because I built this website with it. So I thought it'd be easy to show it. If you click on the image, you will see this edit settings. And when you go into edit settings, you choose a background color, and then you choose blend mode. And in this case, we're told multiply. But what I would say is fool around with the background color, because you can see I started with the color from the logo, but actually it didn't look as good. And I just messed around with this color until I got something that looked good, and I did it kind of by eye. And multiply as well, you might want to change that, try a few different ones out and see how you go, because that would really change how it looks as well. So moving on from that, we would always use bold text. If we use a colored background or a pattern background or anything like that, we'll always use bold text. So here's an example. This one has normal text. This one has bold text. I think the one on the right is way more legible. And that's kind of my old business partner just told me, this is like a written in stone rule. You're always going to make it bold if you put it on a colored background. So grouping might not be something that all of you guys know about. It's kind of like a design thing that you'd learn if you're learning design. So group like-minded elements. So I know elements don't have minds, but this is something that one of my staff made. They were making a social media post, and I simplified it so there's no design involved. But they just went, I know I need to spread this out, but how do I do it? I'll put a bit at the top, some in the middle, some at the end. But what you'd be looking at is, does this middle bit relate to the top bit or the bottom bit? Because it's in the middle, it doesn't relate to anything at the moment. And if you look on the right, we've kind of said, well, did you know? And then the fact. They are related, so we'll put them closer to each other. And then phone number's not related, so that can be a bit further away. And again, when we're thinking about negative space, I could have put these two things right at the top, but putting it down a little bit gave a little bit of white space above and a little bit below. And I think it looks a bit neater like that. So don't just space things. Like this one was spaced evenly, but spread apart. And it was just because I know I need to space it, but I don't know how to space it. And the way to solve that is grouping elements together that belong together. And moving on, I'll talk about visual hierarchy. So this is, again, another design sort of thing that you'd learn about if you're learning design. So I've borrowed these from this other website. So please do visit that website and learn more about design. It saves me some time. You can see size and scale. When they're both together exactly the same size, neither of them has a priority. But when you made one bigger and smaller, you can see that it adds visual interest, but it also tells you which one to look at first. So you look at the bigger one first, and then you look at the smaller one afterwards. Next one is color and contrast. So these are all the same color. None of them actually have any priority over the other one. Now we make one blue, and that one stands out more than the others. So when you're thinking about these are just generic examples. But if you're thinking about, like, say we have pricing on our page, and we have 3 different pricings, and we prefer the customers to choose one of them, that's when we would consider to use color or contrast or some way of differentiating it and giving it visual hierarchy. So visual hierarchy is what is more important. And then visual direction is kind of like, where does your eye go on the page? So in this case, your eye would probably go to the blue first. So that would have good visual direction and also the hierarchy. So this is typographic hierarchy. So you can see they've written tittle, which made me laugh. But you can see that if it's all the same size or it's the wrong way around, it won't be as easy to read, and it won't have the right hierarchy. And what you really want to do is realize that people won't always read all of your content. They'll skim read it. So making things clearer and giving it a hierarchy helps them to know which bits to read and which bits to skim. I know you don't want them to skim them, but they will. That's human nature. So think about that as you're doing things. Okay, this image isn't loading, so I'll skip it. Proximity is another type of visual hierarchy. So here they're all just spread out. I don't really know which one to look at first. And here they're all put together. So it's really clear that I look at all 3 of them at the same time. Alignment, of course, you could have, if you're doing like a front page of a magazine, this might be okay. But if you're asking people to read things and digest things on a website, you'd probably be more sensible to go with this sort of alignment. So everything, naturally, we would read from top to bottom and left to right in the UK, at least. Other countries will be different, but aligning it in this way makes it very easy for me to digest in my normal pattern of things. And it also makes me look at the picture first and then go to the title. You could make the title more eye-catching and come first if you wanted it to. So another one for visual hierarchy is repetition. You can see I've got 1 lemon on the right, and on the left I've got lots of lemons. I know there's differences in the darkness of the pictures and stuff, but repetition can provide patterns and make things more visually interesting and basically give it a higher hierarchy than the things below it. And adding leading lines. So this one, all of the lines there are just a simple pattern, but they kind of all point towards the word after, and that makes you look at it. So this is like visual hierarchy and visual direction, really. So see how you can use this in your designs as well. And the rule of thirds, which is basically drawing a grid of 3. And what you can see here is it's just a guy running with a briefcase. However, the one on the right is at the end. It kind of makes him look like he's running faster. So you can use that to add visual hierarchy and visual direction. This is really commonly used in photography, where you might not always put the center, put the object in the center. You can put it to the left or the right, and it makes it more interesting, but it also guides your eye towards it. And again, perspective, if you put these 2 next to each other, this one's more visually interesting, and it kind of draws your eye to it a little bit more. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, so moving away from visual hierarchy now, we're moving on to alignment. And especially I see this with sliders. So This might be something that you guys might have done in the past or seen somewhere else. And it's about lining things up consistently. So when it comes to alignment on the web, we are really lucky. We have grid systems in place. And if you're using templates, you might not even be aware of the grid system because it might just work. But we have like a Bootstrap and Foundation and UIKit and stuff like that. But when we come to sliders, generally, they're not aware of the grid systems. And so you have control over the design. And that's suddenly the first time that you've been able to move things around easily and put things in different places. And if you haven't understood visual hierarchy and alignment, you may struggle with that at first to make it look nice. And if you do struggle with it and it's too difficult to line up with the rest of your site, just cheat, just center align it. That'll be the easiest way around that. But the sliders aren't aware of the grid. So here's an example of where you can see the bottom, we've got 2 yellow lines. This is the grid for the website. And at the top, we have the slider, and it's got 2 different yellow lines. So it's not actually aware of the grid below. And you could try and line it up. Obviously, you need to be careful of mobile and tablet and everything else as well. But this is something I commonly see where the grid is just totally ignored for the slider and things could be put anywhere. In fact, I often see that they use different fonts on that part of the site as well, different font sizing. Pretty much everything could change. Even the colors could change. And just like a few notes about this. So when it's aligned here on the left, it all lines up. Over here on the right, it goes above. I would kind of line it up with Pat testing in Romford. I would line the top of quick contact up with that part so that when you're reading left to right, you can come over here and see this as well. As an extra couple of notes, you've got tell and then the phone number and then email and then a long email address. And the reason the email address has moved down is because there's not enough room for it. But you could easily make it more consistent by moving the phone number down after tell manually so that that was consistent. The heading, the label was always above the number. But saying that, when it comes to telephone and email and stuff like that, you don't really need to label it. I know that's an email address. Probably everybody knows that's an email address. There's really no point in writing email next to it. Same with tell. There's probably no point. We know it's a telephone number. And quick contact as a heading. First of all, I would left align it so it's all left aligned. And second of all, quick contact doesn't mean very much to me. So if you're going to either remove the heading or if you're going to get a heading there, use call to action, something like call us today, contact us now, whatever it is. So that's how I would improve that design. But the main point I really was making is that sliders, just because you have control over the design, don't forget about the rest of the site, the layout, the font and everything else. And so on from that is don't make full width text. So use columns if you can. So here's an example. This text goes all the way across the page and it constrains people's eyes. It's not very comfortable reading it. I would say that people probably won't read it. It looks like a lot of work and a lot of effort. And so, as I said, if you can use columns, you can improve that. So here's one on the right, which is used columns. So it looks slightly better. And it still looks like a lot because it is, but it looks easier to read and you won't have to read all the way left to right. You would also see this in magazines, newspapers. If you look at any of that printed media, you'll notice they consistently use columns rather than going all the way across the page. So it's really good practice. It's been around for years. And if you don't want to use columns, you could just reduce the width of the main content area so it's not as wide. So this page could easily go over here, but just made it a bit slimmer. Next one I see quite a lot is the stretching of images. So don't stretch images. So keep the height and width proportions constrained when you resize them. So that means sizing it like with the height and width at the same time, so it'll always look the same. So show you an example. Here's the original image on the left, and the photo's by Yulia Polyakova, so it's from Pexels, so check that out. But you can see the one in the middle, I've stretched it a little bit. The height is still the same, but the width is not. And I'm sure I don't need to explain why the client might not be too happy with you making her look a little wider. So always be careful with that when you're resizing your images. Try and make sure they stay same proportions. And so on text, don't use black. So you can see the word tint is just a slightly lighter black. And black is a really like in-your-face color. It's very definite. And I would move away from using it for body text. and instead use a tint of it. And you'll find that a lot of the template clubs will do this already. So one thing I like to do is get your main color, say that would be like a dark blue or something, then you could just make it like 80% like black, but with a hint of blue in it, and just make it slightly less than full black. Another one is to avoid widows. So widows is a typographical term, and it just means that there's a word on its own at the end. And I often see this happening, and the way to avoid it in web design is to do a non-breaking space before the last character. So ampersand NBSP semicolon is a non-breaking space in HTML, and if you can use that, you'll stop that from happening. And it's really like, it's a sin in the design world, so try and take that into account. So it looks like I've got another question, and the poll is open now if you want to vote, guys. And the question is, design is subjective, so some people like some things, some people like other things. And what I find is when people think like this, they kind of go, well, I could make anything I want because design is subjective. So we have some good votes that have come in. So I'm going to end the poll now. So I'll share the results, to be fair. So yeah, a lot of people said yes, but there are still rules. And one person said some people should not be allowed an opinion on design. And I will actually, I'll actually cover that, to be honest with you, because of course, there are some things, like if you go to an art gallery, of course, you like some pictures, paintings, and not others. But there are still rules to design. If you look at all the best designs, you probably won't find one in which you say, that really doesn't work. But you will find some that you prefer to others. But if you look at the worst designs, you'll be going, Jesus, these ones really don't work. And when it comes to some people should not be allowed an opinion on design, I would say that the one reason I find that important is because your client may go and ask people, what do you think of this website I've had built for me? And they will ask, commonly, they will ask their partner, and then they will ask their family, and none of them are designers. So when this happens to me, I think, well, I'm here with 13 years experience, and you've just asked your wife, and she's a dog trainer and she doesn't have any experience. So if you are going to ask people's opinions on your own designs, because, you know, hopefully the guys on here are non-designers and might want to hear some opinions, go and find a designer to ask. Go and find someone who has experience that you can ask about things. You'll get a better opinion. So be consistent with design, with branding, with everything. If you're consistent, you'll get better results. So you get better results if you have just a few fonts. 1 or 2 would be better than 7. Don't keep using different fonts everywhere. Don't keep changing colors all the time. If you capitalize something, like bullet points, for example, capitalize all of them. If you make full stops on the end of bullet points, full stops on all of them or none of them. And if you're going to do alignment, make sure that's consistent as well. So here's an example of a design which is not consistent, because the headings here are purple, and over here the heading is gray. And there are some purple writing here, and they've made a bit of I consider it to be a design error. I'll cover this a bit later, but this font is almost the same size as this font. I can see it's smaller, but it's close enough that they're kind of fighting with each other. And I would always try and avoid that situation. And my business partner used to say to me all the time, those two are fighting with each other because this, that, the other. And in this case, it's because they're such similar sizes. So yeah, try and avoid those sort of things. So moving on, I follow on quite quickly with don't be too similar, which is covering a very similar point. So these two fonts are actually different sizes, but they're so similar, there's kind of no visual hierarchy because of it. And it looks like there's a mistake if things are too similar. So if you look at these green boxes on the left, they're all slightly different greens, but they're close enough that it looks like a mistake. Like I meant that color, but I just missed it by a little bit. So consider that when you're doing colors as well. If you look on the right, they're so clearly different that you know that it's meant to be like that. And you're not really, if you're going to make them this similar in color, you may as well just pick one of them and use that one throughout. So consider textured backgrounds. Textures can add real visual interest to a page and can really pull in like the brand or the theme into a page. But flat colors can be a bit boring. And I'm not against flat colors. Flat colors are great. They are so, when I said keep design simple, they keep design simple. They make things easy to read. And there's, you can't go wrong with it. But this page, for example, is a nice enough page. And we've kept it simple. It looks great. It's very in your face. So if we were trying to do a call to action or a contact form on this background, it would obviously stand out more than the rest of the page, which may have a white background. But if we need to highlight a few different things on the page, just doing this all the time would soon lose the visual interest because it would become so common. So we could use a textured background on the other places where we don't have the call to action or the contact form. So this is quite a nice texture, but if we were like, I think this is roof tiles. If we were having a roofing website, this would be a cool way of making the roofing site, tied into the theme of roofing. But because the tiles have this kind of white part, it's kind of hard to read the word can't and the end of the word problem. And the way you could solve that is by putting a black square over it and making it see-through. So similar to the mixed blend idea. So in this case, it's the same picture, but the text is so much more readable. So before and after makes the text stand out a lot more, but still ties the theme in, but it's just a lot more subtle. Here's a real life example. This is a bike cafe, and we've got all of these cogs and wheels and stuff like that. And that stuff would be really busy as a background. But because we've made it brown and we've kind of dulled it down, we can use it as a background. And it's kind of like you might not even notice it straight away. And you can read the text off it easily. But it's tied in the theme really well. And the next one is to think about who's the customer, who's the user, and think about their personality and their character. So I've given you an example. If you made a website for Bank of America and it looked like this, they probably wouldn't be very happy. They are not expecting to see a very sad clown when people are talking about a very serious subject like opening a bank account. And they're not expecting to see this quirky font, which is, not going to be what they want. So think about the site you're building, think about the style that they use. And again, like if you're a non-designer and you're thinking, I don't know how to do this stuff, go and have a look at other banks and see what they're doing and see what fonts they're using and see what colors they're using. Are they all using the similar colors? Then maybe that's the sort of color scheme you should go for as well, because maybe that's kind of the industry. And I can tell you that banks will often go for blue because it's a very safe color. So have a look at color theory as well. So moving on from that, I've got to the end of my presentation already. I think I was a bit quick, maybe. I guess the question is, did you learn about design? Do you still think it's subjective? Do you think it can't be taught? Do you think any of my ideas were subjective? Or were they, I tried to make them as clear as possible to be objective. And I think that is the right way to talk about design. And that's why the rules in design work. So, you can find more design tips on our YouTube page, and you can reach out to me via the website if you have any questions, and via Twitter and all the usual channels. But thank you very much. I don't know if there's a way of letting people join and ask questions, Benjamin, or?
Yes, it's possible just writing in the chat, and then I can promote them or use the FN question answer button below the channel.
Go back to contact info. There's a contact info for you guys. I think I can show you my Twitter in the chat. If you want to follow there, you can ask me questions. I'm not super active, but
do you have the slides somewhere online?
Slides, yeah. I can give you guys the slides because you've attended, but we cannot publish them everywhere because we're not publishing this video, I believe, straight away. So the people who paid for entrance will get the main benefit, and anyone who wants to know this information will have to wait for it. So I'm happy to share it with you guys, but I would ask you not to share it with other people. And once the video has been released, if you want to share it, I don't care. Thanks, Andrew. If anybody wants to just hit me on Twitter or through the website or something, I'll share the slides with you.
So there is an ethic question in the
On the Q&A, is there?
Q&A, yes.
Ah. 1 second, SD, I'll come back to you. Let me just do this one. Do you ever find that design concerns may conflict with accessibility concerns? That is a great question. I really like that. Yes, they do. And also, not just accessibility, but conversion rates conflicts with design. And what the client wants may conflict with design. But yes, accessibility, my designers who work for me, I often hire guys who are good at print design because they really understand design and they really understand grids and stuff, but they don't really understand websites and technology. So it isn't really their knowledge that they have about accessibility. So that's our developers' choice to solve it. It doesn't really have to conflict, but you should consider accessibility in design. Some of the tips I've given, like using good contrast on your backgrounds, will help your accessibility concerns. Making text a certain size, like Apple would like all of your text to be 16 pixels on email templates, for example, and it will resize it in some cases if you don't do that. And that is because they want everybody to be able to read it. And Google has also said 16 pixels is a good minimum size. So when we build really fancy websites for really posh things, the designers always put really small fonts on it. And they say, hey, it looks so classy. And I say, yeah, but it's too small. You can't read it. So that sort of thing happens all the time. So yeah, it does conflict. You should be aware of it. It's a totally different subject, to be honest with you, so I haven't covered it here. But yeah, I got another one from Rhonda. If a client requires a lot of information on the page, what are some good ways to break it up so the page still looks interesting? That's another really good question because it happens a lot. And what I would say is to break it into sections. So split what might appear to be one major bit of content about one topic, split it so it's not all in the same section on the website. So a good way to do that is just to say, right, I need to split this into 3 parts because it's too long. And then say to the client, would it be possible for you to give me another 2 headings for these topics? And I'm going to split it this way because it will look better in the design. Client will often be happy to do that. And then you can just put it into sections, and then you'll have more white space around it, and you'll be able to give them different background colors or something to make it more interesting. I'm just going to go back to the chat where SD had written a question. For sliders, do I have a favorite image ratio? I do not. I would generally try and do it by eye on what I think looks best. Sometimes in sliders, I may not use an image because I might use some text and I might use a contact form. So one thing I really like to do is use a contact form at the top of a website. And I always used to get told to put them at the bottom of the website because the top is about telling people what we do. Well, I would still tell people what you do. I'll try to answer the questions. Who are we? What do we do? And why should you use us? Or why should you use us, not someone else? But if you answer those questions very clearly, a contact form next to it, people would probably say, I just want to get a quote, and then fill in the form. So you find that works a lot more. But yeah, I don't really have a favorite image ratio. You can probably do 1/3 and 2/3 or 2/3, or yeah, either way around would probably work. If you want to, if you want a rule to simplify it, and you're not a designer and you want to just think of something, probably 1/3 and 2/3 is good. Do I have a plugin or extension recommendation for visually impaired users who prefer night mode and dark background? I do not have a plugin or recommendation for that, I'm afraid. I wish I did. It's a very important issue. I'm really glad that Joomla 4 has taken accessibility on board. I don't know. I think there might be some settings in your browser that could do it. But if you're looking for it for all users, I would probably just go on the JED and have a look and maybe try some out and see if they fit your needs. I wish I had a better answer than that. But do you know what? It might be worth asking in one of the groups, like the Joomla Facebook group, and one of the accessibility team might be able to help you with that answer. I'm sure somebody knows the answer. Any other questions? I think we're kind of around time, aren't we?
Yes, we have 15 minutes.
Oh, we have 15 minutes. Wow. I really rushed through that presentation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we have 15 minutes. I could probably show you something that I do as part of my proposals, which you guys might find useful. Let me see if I can get a website up. Give me a second. Whoops, all of my emails. So here's something that I would do when I'm proposing something to a client. I would do a screen recording of their competitors and talk through the good things and the bad things. So let's look through some electrician websites quickly, and I'll just show you. I'll skip the adverts and I'll just go down and find. I don't want a comparison websites. I just want to find an electrician. So we'll go to page 5. So there's one, there's one, there's one, and I'm aware of time, so I'll just go through reasonably quickly. I would do a screen recording of this, and I would attach the video in my proposal showing the clients that I have done a review of this. And I would say things like, this is great. There's loads of white space around it. It's really clear what the name of the company is. And its contrast is good on the button. So it's really obvious that I've got to click it. And it's really well spaced out, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a pretty good website, right? And if you saw my slide about repetition, they've got 4 vans in a row there, which is more eye-catching than a single van. So if I move on to the next one, I'm hoping there's not a good one. Oh, right, these guys have used the contact form at the top, so that is a good one. Oh, this is a comparison website. Skip that one. Okay, this is Stark's Electrical. Here's one which is, I can tell straight away, not designed as well. And sorry if Stark's Electrical is online or seeing this. It's not personal. The logo is touching the orange sides. So when I showed you about the X height of the logo, this is touching it. So if I was doing this, what I would actually do is I would copy this into a new tab. And as I'm making my video, I would show the client so they can understand it, because they can't picture these things in their mind. So I'll get the logo, and I'll get the image, and I'll add some padding. In fact, I don't need the second one. I just need the top and bottom one. So there, I can straight away show my client and say, right, this logo doesn't have enough spacing around it. Here's the original, it's touching the orange. Here's the new one, it's got a bit of spacing around it. Straight away, it looks better. What it does have is a really strong message at the top saying your local electrician based in Ringwood, wherever that is. But what I would say is the phone number is the most important part, and it's a yellow and an orange background, and it actually is not strong enough contrast. That might even fail accessibility. So again, I would go in there and I would change things, and I would let them see me open up the inspect element and change this, because they always think it's like magic, you know. So I'll do that and make it white, and then I'll do so I'll give it an underline so that it still knows that it's a link and it's important, and it's, you know, visual hierarchy, visual direction, because underlined, it's more important than the stuff that's not. So if I moving down here, it's probably great they've got this video. I'm not going to watch it. Review us on Google. Is that the most important thing on this website, that they leave you a review? They're probably a new customer. They're probably not leaving you a review. So I would question whether that is the most important thing. Probably more important to be there might be we have 5-star reviews on Google. So moving down, again, this, if I can do it on the other one, this is too close to the video. This is touching it near enough. You don't need it to be like that. So again, I would just add padding top and then 20px. Perhaps I would do this only on first of type. And that gives it enough room. And again, this is too crowded, not enough white space on it. So this is the sort of thing that I would do. I record a video, show it to my clients, and they would immediately buy into me as a designer, and that I understand what I'm doing. And again, this is too wide. This whole section is too wide. It doesn't need to be. And instead of putting this into columns, I would just do, if I do this block, and then I do content, and then I do max width, and then I do maybe like 800 pixels, and then there you go. So again, I'll show you the comparison. So here it's like really, really wide. It's totally unnecessary to be that wide. You've got a lot of reading from left to right. You get eye strain. I've just simplified it. And if I'm showing this to my clients on their competitors' websites, the first thing they'll be doing psychologically is buying in, because I want to be better than my competitors. And so it's a really great thing to include as a video when you're putting together a proposal. Another thing I would commonly see is all of this stuff is here. This review us on Google is at the top. The accreditations are at the bottom. This is the stuff that shows me that this guy is actually safe to do his job. He's actually a qualified electrician. These are like UK accreditations. I'm not sure they're worldwide or whatever. But what I would do here is I would say, since this stuff is so much more important, why is it so low down? Why isn't it somewhere higher up? And let's see if I can actually find it now that I've done that. Let's quickly do it. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. Quick second while I look for it. It's probably above this, actually. But anyway, what I would do is I would... it is below this. What I would do is I'd move it up the top and just show them why I've done that. Again, I'm showing them that I care about them. I'm showing them that it's important that I thought about their accreditations and stuff. Okay, this isn't going very well, so I'm going to skip out of it. But basically, if that's so important that they've gone away, they've spent time getting qualified, and it's important enough to put on the website, it's probably important enough for customers to know, and it's probably important enough to stick it nearer to the top. And that's about all I would probably think about on this website. Oh, again, this phone number could be bigger. It's here anyway, so it's a bit weird to repeat it. But if you're going to do this, you may as well make the phone number bigger. You might even go higher than that. You can do that. Again, the contrast is a bit unusual. What I would say for call to action is think about having it like a really different color than the rest of the site. If I normally have like a set of colors which are all similar, so this is orange, and a really different color from that would be like green. This is obviously not going to work on the fly. You would have to think about the colors a bit more, but you can see that this stands out so much more. Your eye is drawn to it straight away. Of course, it's a pretty horrible green, doesn't go with the orange, so don't do that, but make it really eye-catching. And again, if you look at the logo at the bottom, again, it's just like really squashed because it's touching the sides. So in this case, you probably can't use padding. Well, actually, you probably can, but what you would probably do is use a background color as well. So in this case, I'll do that as the background and do white. And then I copy that and then do that and then do the image. I can do padding. And you can see it looks already a bit better. And then obviously, because it's, well, that's not going to work. But I've added a bit too much on the side, but you could center it and automatically it looks a lot better than it did. Considering this is someone's brand, they probably paid money for a logo. If you do this for any big company and you have it touching the side like that, they'll pull you up straight away. So you definitely don't want to do anything like that. But yeah, I hope this gives you some tips of, how we would pitch a client and show that we know about design and teach them how we're going to make them better than the competitors and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that probably made my point roughly on what we're doing with that. Do we have more questions? Decided the video is something you're going to use in a presentation of what could be done with proper design rules. Cool, love to see it. Pat Vanderbosch, that would be fantastic. If you want to have the presentation, feel free and maybe you can build on it. Thanks, Stephen or Stefan Kujan, and thanks, Nikki Colby. Do we have stuff in the Q&A?
Don't think so.
No, I think we're all right. Thanks, Michael, as well. And thanks to all of you guys for attending. Obviously, without you guys here, it would have been a pretty pointless presentation. So thanks a lot for taking the time to turn up. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you got something out of it. So yeah,
Yeah, thank you very much for your great presentation. I think the feedback is very positive and give a lot of new idea. Yeah. Are you afterwards in the community room?
I am moderating Brian Tiemann after this.
Yeah,
So I would
afterwards there's
encourage
this.
you all to go and see Brian Tiemann's talk, because he always gives a great one.
Okay.
But yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, unfortunately, I have plans straight after that, so I won't be in the communal areas. But please do follow me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to do, and you can feel free to reach out to me that way and ask questions if you want.
Okay, very cool.
If you join the Facebook group, you'll see me pop up there every now and then.
Then thank you very much again.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for moderating.
And hope talk to you soon.
Yes, great. Nice to talk to you. Thanks everyone who attended.